Hi and welcome to our YouTube channel. Today I will be presenting the cell theory, which is part of topic 1.1 of the IB biology syllabus, and it includes standard level and higher level material. So first of all, we need to understand what the cell theory is, and to understand that we need to know the three primary statements of the cell theory. So the first statement is that all living organisms are made up of cells. Cells are the smallest units of life. It doesn't get any smaller than that. Even the subcellular structures within the cells are unable to carry out the life processes individually. Meanwhile, cells individually can, which is why they are the smallest units of life. And we also need to understand that all cells come from pre-existing cells. So these three statements, these are the key statements which I would advise you to learn by heart to the cell theory. There are some other common features of cells, which is that genetic material, that cells contain genetic material, which has the instructions for all cell activities in the form of DNA. The plasma membrane of the cell separates the contents from the surroundings, and it also controls the substances going in and out of the cell. Cells release their own energy, and as I mentioned before, subcellular components are not alive. Cells are the smallest units of life. That was one of the main statements of the cell theory. So before we talk about evidence to the cell theory, it's important that we understand what a scientific theory is. A scientific theory is a way of interpreting the natural world. Trends can lead to the development of a theory, and a theory will allow us to make predictions. Now, with the invention of microscopes, scientists could see cells. Robert Hooke was the first person to come up with the idea of a cell when he observed a thin slice of cork under a microscope, and he noticed these structures which looked like prison cells, hence the name cell. And he not only looked at the slice of cork, but he also looked at many other types of plant tissue, and this allowed him to see a trend which led him to creating the cell theory due to this trend. Some more evidence to the theory is the scientist Louis Pasteur demonstrated that cells couldn't grow in sterile conditions. Organelles and viruses cannot carry out all of the characteristics of other living things. So we also have exceptions to the cell theory. So these are cells that defy the cell theory and go against the three primary statements of the theory. The first exception is the striated muscle. And then we have the aseptate fungal hyphae and the giant algae. Now, these exceptions are also known as discrepancies, and scientists must be able to judge whether the discrepancies are too common or serious to make predictions too unreliable to be useful. If so, the theory is discarded. However, in this case, there are too many cells, there is too much evidence that fits the cell theory, and too few discrepancies and exceptions to the theory to allow it to be discarded. So the theory is still solid, it's still in place, if that makes sense. Okay, so the first exception is the striated muscle fibers. Why is it an exception? So the cells are larger than most cells. They are around 30 millimeters long, 3 centimeters, that is quite long. The cells are also multinucleated, meaning that it contains more than one nucleus. This is a key word. So I would advise you to learn it, multinucleated. So yeah, as you can see in this image, there are many nuclei inside of one cell, and there's no division between the nuclei. So it challenges the idea that the cell has one nucleus. A septate fungal hyphae. This is the next exception to the cell theory. So why is it an exception? First, we need to understand that hyphae are long threads, and in a septate fungal hyphae, these threads have multiple nuclei, so they are multinucleated, but the nuclei are not separated by cell walls or membrane. So therefore, the aseptate fungal hyphae challenges the idea that the cell is a single unit. Next, we have the giant algae. It is very large in size. It grows as much as 100 millimeters, 10 centimeters in other words, and it lacks subdivision into separate cells. It has a very complex structure for a cell that fits in with the cell theory. So it challenges both the idea that cells must be simple in structure and small in size. Okay, so to conclude this video, we learnt about the cell theory. You should know the 3 primary statements by now. We also looked at some evidence for the cell theory, and also the discrepancies to the theory, such as the striated muscle, the giant algae, and the aseptate fungal hyphae. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to our channel for more biology and also chemistry content.